On a recent trip to eastern Nevada, we visited an area we have been curious about for some time. The first day involved driving from Salt Lake City to Ely, Nevada, where we would spend the night at Bristlecone Motel. After crossing over the state line into Nevada, we stopped at the Sacramento Pass campground. A network of two-track roads and single-track trails allows hikers, bicyclists, horseback riders, and OHV enthusiasts a chance to explore some beautiful country and see some historic mining ruins. The trail we chose is called the Sac Pass Trail. It's a 2-mile loop trail that goes up to the top of a hill. From there you get some great views in all directions, especially of the Great Basin National Park, which is just to the south of Sacramento Pass. The campground is very nice and can make a good place to spend the night if you are passing through. During our stay in Ely, we visited the Nevada Northern Railway Museum. We learned that the railway was built in the early 20th century to support the local copper mine. The mine went through a number of owners, ending with the Kennecott Copper Corporation. In the late 70s, the demand for copper diminished, and by 1983, Kennecott closed the mine and the railway ceased operations. The railway station was abandoned, leaving everything just as it was, and now it is a museum. After leaving Ely, we headed west on Highway 6, then south on 318 to the Hot Creek Spring. I had heard that this was a nice spring, but I didn't expect it to be this amazing. The temperature was mildly warm, like a heated pool. The water is crystal clear and deep enough to swim, although it's a bit small. Still, it was a real pleasure. The pool is within a marsh in the Wayne E. Kirch Wildlife Management Area. For those wishing to camp, there is also a campground near the spring. If I'm ever passing this way again, I will certainly make a stop here. From the spring, we headed south again on 318 to the White River Narrows. This area is an archaeological site and has many impressive Fremont rock art panels. The area is not only interesting for its rock art, but for its geologic beauty too. We stopped briefly at the Alien Research Center, a large gift shop. Then we went into Ash Springs to fuel up. Our next destination was the Delamar ghost town. The town is located about 13 miles south of Highway 93, west of the town of Caliente. The road is nicely graded for the first 11 miles, where it then becomes more narrow, rocky, and steep. At the base of the hill, there's a cemetery that is definitely worth checking out. Many of the tombstones have coins that have been left by visitors to show family members that somebody stopped by to show respect. Delamar was mined for silver and gold from 1895 to 1900. You can still see many of the remains of the buildings that housed the 3,000 residents. One interesting thing is the buildings were built from rock rather than wood. For this reason, many of the buildings' walls are still standing. We also encountered some wild horses. Unlike other wild horses we've seen, these did not seem to be afraid of us. In fact, a couple of them actually started approaching us. Delamar had several buildings, such as a hospital, an opera house, churches, a school, and several businesses, and many saloons. Delamar's water supply was a well in Meadow Valley Wash, which is about 12 miles away. Unfortunately, that was not enough. Supplies were brought in from 150 miles away using a mule team. A closer look at the ruins shows some surprising evidence of craftsmanship for such a remote location. The stones were cut and shaped by masons, and the interior walls were finished with plaster. Our next stop was supposed to be the Caliente Railroad Depot. Unfortunately, it was closed for remodeling or some kind of maintenance. So we continued on to the Cathedral Gorge, just outside of the town of Pioche. While we were there, we took a short walk out to Eagles Point, but decided not to spend much time there since we see much of that type of thing in our home state of Utah. The next morning, we made the long drive to the town of Wells. After getting some lunch, we drove up to Angel Lake, a short drive southwest of town. We were there at just the right time of the year for the fall foliage. The lake is nestled in a beautiful cirque at just below 9,000 feet. We also took a short hike to Smith Lake. This lake is situated in a cirque similar to Angel Lake but smaller. Because the lake was natural as opposed to Angel Lake, which is dammed, we actually thought it was even prettier and was well worth the hike. The next morning we drove out to the 12-mile hot spring, also known as Bishop Creek Hot Spring. About 10 miles out of Wells on the North Metropolis Road, there is a right turn onto private land that leads to the hot spring. The 2-mile road is not passable without a high-clearance vehicle. Rather than risking damage to their cars, some people choose to walk the 2 miles. After arriving at the spring, we found several pickup trucks already parked there. 2 of them were actually parked right in the spring. In hopes that they would be leaving soon, we walked up the road toward the dam to get some exercise. When we returned to the spring an hour and a half later, the people were just leaving and we got to enjoy the spring to ourselves. This has become a very popular hot spring, but I think for the most part, people are pretty respectful and considerate. Anyway, we had a great visit to the spring and ended the long road trip with a really nice soak.